Hi, I'm Steve Johnson. This is one of a series of video tutorials that we do to supplement our monthly tutorial we do in our newsletter. I'd like to just talk for a minute about copying artwork because it's a challenge that many of us photographers run into one way or the other, if for no other reason because we have artist friends who need their artwork copied. And certainly in the silver age of photography, we were always making copy slides of our gelatin silver prints, our sea prints, whatever the medium might be, in order to present them to galleries, show them in lectures, things of those along those lines. Nowadays, the general reason that we're copying artwork is because we're trying to make a digital copy of something that we don't have a digital copy of. And the challenge is twofold. First of all, trying to reproduce the colors of the original with as much veracity as possible, and making sure that the lighting is fairly even on the subject matter, or finding some digital way of making sure that you even that light out after the fact. So let's deal with the first issue first, which is the color balance. Now, if we're shooting a digital camera raw, we can help the process of color matching along by photographing a Macbeth color checker. Specifically nowadays, the color checker Passport made by X-Rite, which gives you a combination of the Macbeth chart as a target, as well as a piece of software that processes that photograph of the color checker into what becomes a preset camera calibration, a starting point for Adobe Lightroom or Camera Raw to actually transform the color that got encoded by the photograph of the color checker in the lighting situation of the copy stand into a preset starting point in those raw processors that you would select instead of Adobe Standard or one of the default starting points for that particular camera. That gives you a color matrix translation that gives you a much more accurate starting point with the raw processing than you would have if you hadn't done that. Now, in addition to that, if you use the white balance tool on one of the white patches or the light gray patches, you will then further neutralize the rendition of that artwork copy in the raw processor so that you end up with a fairly good starting point, both with regards to the color matrix that's being used to translate the raw data into a processed file for you to preview in the raw processor. And now, in addition to that, to white balance on the white or light gray patch within the color checker itself. So those two things give you the basic starting point for the raw processing that you would then fine-tune according to your own taste in consultation with your client or friend, or whatever matrix of considerations you have with regards to the end product that you want. Part two to all of this, once you've got that processed file out in Photoshop, is to try and compensate for any inequality in the field of view lighting, which is almost always uneven. Even when you do your absolute best on a copy stand to make sure the lights are coming in at 45-degree angles so that the angle of incident matches the angle of reflection and you get no reflections back off toward the lens up top, but you get the light reflecting off at the angle that it entered. How's that for a graphic? The care with which you set up the original copy stand to begin with has an enormous effect on how successful the artwork copying is. But as I said a moment ago, it's almost impossible to get that lighting dead on even. So with the Equalight software that my friend Robin Myers has made, he takes a task that many of us have been doing in Photoshop manually and automates it. It works by taking a photograph of the blank white copy stand in the exact same lighting condition as you take a photograph of the artwork itself. So you have two photographs, one that becomes a matrix of an encoded pattern of the unevenness of the illumination, and one is your finished artwork that you then use in conjunction with that in Equalight to even out the uneven illumination of the copy work. So with those two pieces of the puzzle in place, it's amazing how you can make your artwork copy work much more accurate to begin with, and make the lighting itself, which is almost impossible to get even, equalized and made even through the Equalite software. Now, of course, additionally up front, you need to make sure that you get the geometry of the copy as correctly rendered within the frame of the camera as well. So you're not doing a lot of digital distortion after the fact to try and make a rectangle a rectangle. If you have failed to do that as perfectly as you want to, by all means, you should use the Transform Distort tool in Photoshop to make sure that you do reproduce the rectangle as a rectangle and correct for any failings of alignment that you might have had on the copy stand to begin with. So that's a little video tidbit in addition to our monthly newsletter tutorial on artwork copying, and I hope you find that helpful. And if you want to subscribe to the newsletter that always contains these tutorials, go to sjphoto.com and you'll find a link to the subscription for the newsletters. And you can always look on the website and see what the current newsletter is if you're not subscribed. So thanks very much. We hope they're helpful, and good day to you.